Once again, thanks so much for tuning in with us in this video. Really excited for you to join us here at Coaching Changes Lives. And tonight, we have a very special group of people here. Individuals who are leaders, movers, and shakers, and coaches in their respective fields, in both in leadership field, in training, in consulting, and many of them have bring together a wealth of experience over the last several years. And in this special seminar and webinar, and I would say a little mastermind group that we have here, very amazing individuals from different parts of the world. We're here to discuss one very critical topic for those of you going for PCC and MCC level, which is on the power of presence. And I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion that we're going to have tonight. So if it's the first time you're joining us here at Coaching Changes Lives, do remember to hit the subscribe button and notification bell to stay tuned with all the latest updates that we have for you. And so we have our friends here, Johnny, who recently just became a PCC, and Gopalan, who's on his way to be PCC as well, and Wei Yong as well on his way. And of course, we have Yoko here, who's already a PCC. And I think it's really interesting that tonight we're going to discuss a little bit more about what presence is. And presence, oftentimes people talk about presence being as a tool, or presence being like a technique, or presence being a particular activity that a coach does. Now, if we think that presence is what we do, or an activity, or a tool or technique, then we do not understand what presence really is. Because the moment presence becomes a tool or technique, or we have heard this before, right? When coaches say, "Oh, I'm activating my presence. I'm activating my presence." And something's wrong if we need to activate our presence. The very idea of activating presence means you're not present. Then you have to activate it. And the idea of thinking of presence as a tool or as a technique disqualifies your very ability to be present in that moment. So then how do we think of presence, right? So today we hear things like presence-based coaching, be in present, or entering presence. So it sounds very elusive, but really what presence is, it's more than just being there, right? It's more than just trying to psych yourself up to be present in that moment. But presence also shows and demonstrates in a few ways. One from the way of the coach, another from the client, and another in the conversational flow. And that's the beauty of coaching. Coaching doesn't just involve with me as the coach, it's not me as the center place, but it's also coming from the client, the energy flow. And in that process, or the conversational flow, something's created, something's co-created in those moments. And that's the beauty of presence. So presence is not an eat. Presence is not something that happens, but presence, it's there. When the spirit is there, when the presence is there, it flows, naturally flows. The outcome of presence is that conversational flows. There is a deep sense of reflection. There's a deep sense of silence, but that silence, it's also producing the outcome, the breakthrough. I remember one time we were experiencing this, and the client was actually stuck. And the coach has no idea what to do, right? So most of the time when coaches, when the client gives a lot of information and we do not know what questions to ask, we tend to rush to think of the next question to try to fill in, because the silence is so deafening. But the moment we do that, we break the entire conversational flow. And you realize very, very difficult is to be very silent. And so just to be silent and not talk, actually is one of the most powerful things that a coach can do. It's not what the coach is doing, but the coach is actually enabling that moment to happen in the client. So presence, it's one of the prerequisites for you to be able to listen better, for you to have the ability to develop generative questions better, for you to evoke awareness better. And one of the best things about presence, it also develops trust with the client. So here we have Johnny and Wei Yong, and even Gopalan, who are trainers, and they have trained their staff, they've mentored their staff before. So let's ask them a little bit more about their own experience in being present in the moment. And there are times when you're not present, what happened with your clients? Who would like to share a little bit about your experience being present in the moment and being out of present?
I would like to share an experience or several experiences that I have been through as a facilitator in the groups that I have facilitated for the last 30 plus years, is that when I give an invitation to all of us in the room. That includes myself, and I find that there is a moment that happens in the group or in the room with everybody, which is a very interesting silence. And when I noticed that the response to my invitation is after a pause or a delay, um, I've experienced this depth in their response. And they have even come and spoken to me during the break saying that, most of the training programs we learn and hear something, but here it is making us to think. And I'm thinking for the first time, and this session is allowing me to think. I'm asking myself, as you ask this question, Jedi, if that is an enabler to presence, an invitation to be present, and if so, how is that manifesting in the people who are in the room to be able to think without any noise or decibels hitting them and coming up with their own insights, discoveries, and shifts? It's just a thought that I wanted to share.
Mm. Mm. Now you're probably thinking, why do we had such a long pause? And for those of you who are watching this for the first time, you're probably going to skip this 5 seconds. But don't skip the 35 seconds just yet, right? One of the beauty in the ability to pause. And oftentimes we just say, oh, just pause. But it's not just pausing randomly, but pausing in those moments where you're holding that space. And what do we mean by holding that space? So, for example, if you're training, you are team coaching, you're team facilitating, you might be coach training, you might be doing consulting plus an element of coaching. So you begin to realize that, say, hey, one of the most powerful training sessions is not when the trainer is the one leading the people, it's when the people are beginning to design their own learnings for themselves. They're beginning to not rely on the coach to feed them or force feed them, but when the people are there creating that moment, the connections for themselves. When that happens, a lot of things birth forth. And one of the beauty is this: what we see coaches becoming, it's becoming like a catalyst for change. So today we hear a lot of coaches say, I'm a catalyst, I'm a catalyst. But if you say you're a catalyst and you are not being a catalyst, you're not a catalyst. In the very same way, I'm a presence-based coach. I'm a presence. But if you are saying you're a presence-based coach, but you're not present to listen to another person, you have you're not present at all, right? So one of the beauties when we learn when I recall during science class when we learn this concepts of enzymes being catalysts, like when we eat food we have natural enzymes that breaks down carbohydrates to glucose, right? And then after that to different smaller compounds for our bodies to digest. And we begin to realize that, hey, what if presence is like the conduit? What if presence is that very catalyst? Because the thing is that we thought we have to try to do more and do more and do more to really make that change happen for the client. We thought that breakthrough, it's about doing more and more and more to really break through. But what if in the whole process of us as coaches, we think that we need to do so much, but what if actually the less we do, it's more? Or what if we actually do less, but it actually produces more? Because the very thing is that we try to do so much that it kind of convolute the whole process. I remember one time when I was trying to make a souffle, and one of the best ingredients of souffle is the amazing egg white and the sugar or the custard sugar. And we know, right? If you beat that egg, you can overbeat the egg. So I thought that, okay, I beat the egg, it's so fluffy. Let's beat some more. Let's make it even more fluffy and make it more fluffy. And Johnny is shaking his head right now because you know what happens when it is overly fluffy, too much aeration. They call it aeration. You put it into into the oven, nothing rises. It's just like it just go flat. Why? Because that's overbeating, overworking the client. So is it possible that in conversations with our clients, is it possible in training sessions, is it possible in facilitation that we might overbeat the egg, or we might overbeat the souffle because we exchange presence for doing, or we exchange presence for performance. Today we see a lot of public speakers who call themselves, I'm a public speaker, blah blah blah. And oftentimes I ask them one question: what is the intention of being a public speaker? Is it to inspire? Is it to create change? Is it to show how good I am? Most of them will say it's not for me. I'm doing it to help people. But words is one thing, but the heart is another, right? I think in the Chinese proverb, there's one proverb that says this, right? Your words does not tell what the heart is really saying, right? So although you may say that, but what do you truly believe in? Right. So today, whenever we hear coaches, speakers, trainers, we always ask them, what is the greatest intention of what you're doing? The intention can be seen by the action. So although we may say certain things, we may say, yes, I believe in presence, but your very action denies that, then it totally falls apart, right? So today we see a lot of coaches. One of the big things in coaching as well is about helping our clients find alignment and inner congruence for themselves. If the coach tries to find alignment, it's like us trying to be the O-ring for the space shuttle, and you would explode, right? So really important is for that whole moment to happen for them. So one of the big questions that Johnny brought forward is really, really interesting is, then how do we actually enable this presence? Is it an activation? Is it something that we can activate in the conversational flow? Is it something that we can ignite from the conversation? How do we go deep into presence really, really fast? And we can feel it, we can feel when the conversation goes very, very deep. But yet we can also feel conversations that are very shallow. We can also view conversations that are just very, very superficial. Like, think about this: when you have meetings with, let's say, potential prospects or clients or acquaintances, that you kind of like want to quickly wrap up the thing and go away. The conversations tend to stay at a very, very above superficial, right? It's just general chit chat. But when we activate presence, something else happens as well. Something else follows. When we activate presence, we take on the hat of curiosity. We take on that lens of curiosity, where we become very, very curious about, oh, why did the person say that? For example, today we see Gopalan's amazing new house, and I'm just curious, where's that lovely Dyson fan that's always beside him, right? So now notice, do you all see that he just had a little smile over there? Even noticing the little smile, right? It's also being present in the moment, because now Gopalan is thinking, yeah, you remembered my little fan that's always beside me, but now I've changed my house to a beautiful, big house there. And then Johnny, right? Johnny is always thinking about, hey, oh, my background looks lovely today, and today Johnny is not quite in the center of his curtains. So usually the curtains will be kind of like in the center, right? And Johnny kind of have a bit there. But it's interesting today, and we can see a little light shining from here. So he probably has installed a little light, or maybe there's just one of his lamps there that's shining there. So it's quite interesting as well. And we know that that's his favorite spot. We always see him in that same spot with that long curtains as well. Now, curiosity, to train curiosity, it's to make obvious the things that are already there. So sometimes presence is also about bringing to light things that are already there. So sometimes coaches try to find new things, try to dig. Oh, is it Gopalan has a new white hair, or is it that does Gopalan has did he perm his hair or something else? They try to force something out which is not there. Sometimes the most obvious thing is right in front of us, but we're not seeing it. The reason the client can't see what's most obvious to them is because sometimes their whole attention is focused on something else, and that's what we know as the RAS, the reticular activation system, where the whole mind is just focusing on one thing, but they do not see the other things, right? So in the very same way, like I often tell people, I say that if I ask you to think of a pink elephant right now, your mind cannot stop thinking about the pink elephant. Even if I ask you to stop thinking of the pink elephant, by the very fact of me saying pink elephant, and I ask you to stop thinking about pink elephant, you still think about a pink elephant. You're still thinking, right? Because now the pink elephant has met a rainbow elephant. Now, the moment I say rainbow elephant, another elephant just comes to your mind. Maybe it's a small elephant, big elephant. But to remove that is so hard. Now you cannot stop thinking about the pink elephant or rainbow elephant, because Why? The words have power. In the presence of your client, every word that comes out from the coach has weight. Sometimes we call this kabod, right? The weightiness of the coach. Your clients take our words very, very seriously. Very much like when we go and see the doctors. The doctors, like I remember one time when someone said to me, said, "Hey, Jedi, I do not know why, I I tell my wife that going to see the doctors. But obviously you have a flu, just take the flu medicine, right? But I don't know why my wife wants to go to see the doctor, and the doctor is telling exactly the same thing. So have you had that experience before, right? You have kind of like a sore throat, and you self medicate something very not very serious, and someone says, "Oh, you go to see the doctor," but the doctor is telling you the same thing. But why is it that some people trust the words of the doctors more than your own words? Well, because it also tells us this one thing, that your clients trust the profession that we have as a coach. The moment we say we are a coach, there's a certain mentor that's placed on us, a certain thing that's placed on us. So in that moment, the client's actually waiting to receive as well. So there's a sense of drawing from the coach. So the coach has to recognize that every word that comes out, every pause that we create, the rhythms, the flow, the movement in the conversation is orchestrated by the coach. So if you record, when we started this conversation, it was kind of fast. We were like, okay, come subscribe to this channel, blah, 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 blah. But now we're entering a deeper conversational flow. The coach or the team coach in that context is the orchestrator for that flow. How fast it goes, how slow it goes, how deep it goes, we are the orchestrator. But the orchestrator is not the musician. And the orchestrator must always remember that he may be the conductor, but he's not the musician. Yeah. So he's not the one in the spotlight. The musician or the key feature player or the lead singer is the client himself. And everything else, all the other elements are there to support that. So one of the really beautiful things that we're going to explore today, it's one of my favorite is on competency number 5, which is on maintains presence. So let's take a look at this, and then we will explore together, and we're going to go deeper. Right, this is one of the MCC level trainings that I do for a small group of MCC people going for. And since you guys are here, let's do some MCC level training. Since you guys are here, what better thing to do on a Wednesday evening than to spend some time doing really masterful work? Yeah. I remember one time a coach says that, "Oh, I'm going to do transformative work. I'm going to do transformative work." The moment I hear that word, "I'm going to do transformative work," it tells me that the coach has no idea what it's talking about. We cannot do transformative work. Transformation happens. We cannot force transformation. If you force transformation, you will get a flattened souffle, right? Because you're trying to dig too much. In the same way, when we try to force growth, you get what we call limpe. Limpe in Singlish is called weak, frail, right? So let's say, can you imagine this, right? If your child grows, if you have a newborn child, and all the child does, the child's always in those baby carrier or baby support, and he never learns to stand up and fall. The time it takes for the child to learn to walk, it's much longer than the time it takes for another child who learns to crawl, fall, stand, crawl, fall. There is a naturalness in conversation, and there's a naturalness in the growth process of our clients. Sometimes as a coach, when we see our clients fall, we know it's safe. And it's okay for the client sometimes to fall, and it's okay for them to grow. If every time the coach is there to catch them all the time, there will never be a chance where the client can be self-initiated. Because coaching at the end of the day is to allow the client to live life on their own terms and to be able to have control in their life as well, so that they don't become reliant on the coach. Today we have this thing called saviorism, right? I call this saviorism effect of coaches, right? The coach comes to you, "I'm an MCC coach. Wow, I'm one of the 1,000 coach out there that is MCC level, right? I'm blah 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 blah." The moment when they say that, it's very obvious that this MCC coach has to relearn coaching all over again, because he has let ego take over his mind. Ego is the first killer of every MCC coach or every PCC coach that are out there, right? Because the moment they have the badge, "Oh, I'm now a super master transformative, systemic co-creative, wonderful, abundance, life-transforming coach. They have all these fanciful title to the name, but the fanciful title doesn't change life. Sometimes just telling people, I'm saying, hey, I'm just here to be the ear for you. I'm just here to be a mirror for you. I'm here today, not as a coach, but I'm here today just to be here with you. Sometimes just doing that with the client allows them to know that, hey, nobody's judging me. Nobody is there to point out my flaws. Nobody is there. But this person that's in front of me wants to support me in this moment. Yeah. So we'll enter in this frame. Now you begin to realize that the MCC level of coaching is no longer just about the techniques. It's no longer just about the competency itself. It's no longer just about getting the behavioral markers right. It's more than that. It's about the characteristics of the coach, the essence, the vivaciousness, the verve, the inner spirit that the coach carries above what's written here. So the spirit of the letter than the letter itself. So sometimes many coach just look at, okay, tell me exactly what are the checkbox I must do to achieve this. But if you do the checkbox, you become a checkbox coach, right? Then you're never there, very present. So MCC level, we look at your ability to be present, because when we see that, when we know that it's happening, creating in that moment, we know that now you're fully conscious in that very present moment with the client, creating in those moments something beautiful. So let's take a look at what it says here. It's the same core competencies across ACC, PCC, MCC level, but the depth and the characteristics that we're looking at goes a whole new level of difference, right? So let's do a quick recap on the ICF core competency on maintains presence. It says this: to be fully conscious, present with the client, employing a style that's open, flexible, grounded, and confident. There are 4 key words here. Employing a style. So one that's open style. Flexible means being able to move. Grounded means yet being on earth, right? Grounded in this moment. So it's not just living in the lands of rainbows and unicorns and fantasy, but also having the sense of grounding in the space of reality. Yes, the dreams are there, and we want to help you get towards your dream, right? So dreams are good. We're not denying the dreams. We're not denying that you cannot become the next Elon Musk or the next Mark Zuckerberg. We're not denying that your dreams, you can achieve your dreams. But what we are also looking at is the sense of groundedness. So to be grounded in this moment, and also to be confident in the approach, in the conversation with the client. So how do you be fully conscious and yet present? It seems like a dichotomy, because if I'm fully conscious, am I fully conscious with myself, or am I fully conscious with the client, or am I fully conscious in the coaching conversation? What am I fully conscious of? If you're fully conscious of yourself, then every single conversation is all revolving around me, right? But if I'm fully conscious about the conversational flow, I'm noticing my interaction with my client. I'm noticing the client's movement, the client's energy in relation to what I'm saying. And that's when we become present in those moments. And the 6 key things that we look at, right? One is remains focused, observant, empathetic, and responsive. The other is to demonstrate curiosity. Another is managing one's emotions and demonstrates confidence in working with strong emotion client. The other is about being comfortable working in the space of not knowing and allow space for silence, pause, or reflection. Now, when we look at the PCC level for the rest of us who are going for PCC, there are 5 key markers here in the updated PCC markers. One is in response to the whole of the client, who the client really is. And the other, it's the coach acts in response to what the client wants to achieve throughout the session. And the coach partners with clients to support the client, what they choose to happen in the session. And the coach demonstrates curiosity to learn more about the client. And the coach allows for silence, pause, or reflection. So today, we're just going to extract one key thing, one key idea, and we're going to use that and bring it to the MCC level. And that's the idea of reflection. The coach allows for silence, pause, or reflection, allowing for reflection. So this thing about allowing for reflection, that space that we create to allow for reflection, is going to be important, so that the coach doesn't just give and add and add and add and add, but the coach creates that space, that moment for those reflection to come in, to use that and to allow conversations to happen. So we're going to have a little experience here. We're going to do what we call the power reflection in this moment. And we're going to start with this one idea that we just had a little conversation earlier about with who am I in the conversation flow? Who am I? Me as the coach, me as that individual, me as the person learning about what the client is saying. Who am I in the conversational flow? So we're going to use this little topic here. And what we want to do is in this topic, we're going to allow all of us to unmute and to have a little discussion. But yet, I want you to notice a few things. What is happening in your own world as you're expressing? What is happening in your friend's world as they're expressing or as they're listening? And as you are sharing, I want you to notice also the reactions from your friends here. Okay, this is to really train your skills of reflection. And as you notice one person share, see if you can identify some areas and reflect back to them what you're hearing in this moment as we're creating. Okay, so who would like to kick off this little short discussion about who am I in the conversational flow? Oh, okay, we have Wei Yong first.
Oh, hi. Okay, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. So thank you, Jedi, for sharing the earlier part. Who am I in coaching? To be honest, I don't quite think too much about it. So when I'm there, I just, like you say, the ego is one of the biggest issues that anybody can face, right? So I try not to have this identity going to any conversation. Just feel that, okay, let's just be here and find out. And along the way, then we discover what the conversation is about. So in general, I try not to think about too much, who am I, but rather the other question that I ask is, what am I here for? It's something that I ask. And earlier you spoke about maintaining presence, right? So to me, I actually feel that presence is like a commitment to the conversation. And, coaching is a trust-based profession. Before you need anything, you need trust. And I think the best way to demonstrate or build trust is just simply by being present without, I would say, intentions to prove or to perform or to work towards an objective, especially from the coach perspective. Yeah, so that's what I think about presence and as well as who am I.
So listening to Wei Yong's words, I like what he shares about who am I? It's about where am I now in this moment? And did I get you right about where am I now in this moment? Yeah. And I really like that because how masterful coaching happens is that we show up. Because sometimes where am I? I could be somewhere else. I could be in my desk doing work. I could be thinking about maybe something that happened at home. I could be thinking about the next activity I need to do, or I can be thinking about the next client that I need to serve. But where I am, I may be physically here, but I'm not here in that moment. Yeah, that's really nice sharing. What do you think for the rest of us? Like, anyone would like to add in?
If I may.
Yep.
Did you say why am I here?
More like what am I here for?
For me, it seems to be why am I here in the first place? And for me, that is to hold a space for the client, to be there just listening to what the client wants to unload, because most times they just need to unpack their thoughts, because when they try to do too many things, they're all over the place. And when they articulate, they verbalize their thoughts, they realize that they said a lot of things. And what I generally do is just repeat a few keywords back to the client and I mean, I could be wrong, but I just reflect what I heard and see what happens without any agenda. And if the client finds that, oh, I said that, or oh yeah, I said that. I wonder why I said that. What was I trying to say here? But things like that. It arouses the curiosity in the client itself more than the coach. The client himself or herself is now curious about why they said this and that. And this morning, I had a client who actually said so much, so many things in 10, 12 minutes. And when I reflected back, the client started to tear, actually. And I just waited there until the person was ready to continue with the conversation. I didn't utter a word. And by doing that, I found that the client was able to then come out of that emotional state on her own and try to figure out what was all that about, and move on from there. Yeah, that's my sharing.
Oh, thanks so much, Gopalan, for sharing that. And how many of you feel, as Gopalan was sharing, you could really feel what happened in that moment with him? Yeah. Now, one of the interesting things about presence is that it's not about the definition of presence, but it's about how, as a masterful coach, that we show up in the session. And just by showing up, not just being there in person, but showing up in that moment, just for once, in a 30-minute conversation, you put aside every single thing that's on your mind, but just being there, looking at the person, to enable the client to be a more powerful thinker and a beer than a doer. So that in that moment, remember, all this is still pointing us back to the idea of coaching, where it's both creative, which there's the conversational flow, the creativity and innovation and conversation flow, and it's this aspect of thought-provokingness, where only in presence, then we can be curious about what's really happening there. Are we trying to work the client too much? Have we not allowed ourselves to be present in those moments? Have we overthink? Have we overworked? So think about this. For those of us who are trainers here as well, when you're switching back to the coaching hat, and you're switching back on as a team coach now, right? Coaching the whole group of, what changed for you? Was there anything new? Was there anything interesting that happened for you in those moments? Yeah. Okay, so let's hear from anyone who'd like to respond to Gopalan or Wei Yong in those moments. Anyone want to respond to Gopalan or Wei Yong?
So as I was listening to both Vyong and Gopalan, what showed up for me was even stronger belief in me being that emotionless mirror in the coaching space. Never for a moment feeling sad or feeling extremely joyful in the journey that the client is taking, and just being there without any emotion. And I do not know if the mirror goes through any emotion. I was coaching a client yesterday who was trying to get over the grief of losing her father recently. And what I realized as I was listening to Vyong and Gopalan is that who am I being in that space? There was a moment when I had a flash of the memory of my father passing on. And I told myself, that is not the space right now. This space belongs to this client, and let me have that space or hold that space for her and not get into my own feelings. And again, I'm coming back to the mirror. Mirror never feels that, the previous person was looking good in front of me. Now here is Johnny. He has a hand with the plaster. He doesn't look good. The mirror is just being there. For Johnny with the plaster, for Vyong with his fantastic hairstyle, and for Gopalan with not a single white hair, everything black hair on his head. The mirror is being the same for all three of us, and that's what showing up for me as I was listening to both of them.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love what you just shared there about just showing up, and how you mentioned about the mirror being reflecting. So as the mirror has no emotions, but the very emotion that you're reflecting, it's actually the client's emotions. Yeah, the very expression, the gestures, the voice, the energy is actually the client's energy that's being reflected out of the mirror, and very much like this. So what Johnny experienced there, every time as a coach, when we face our client situations, what tends to happen is this effect known as countertransference. It's a psychological effect that happens in those conversations whenever clients brings up a particular topic that triggers a certain memory, triggers a certain incidents in our past that has a certain anchor in our mind. So as a coach, first we need to be aware of our internal triggers. So, for example, some of us might be affected of issues of abortion, issues of parents, issues of death, issues of life, issues of happiness or sadness. But are we able to be in that moment to dissociate ourselves away from me and me as the coach? Me as the coach needs to hold that space for the client. Me as me, after the session I can cry. Me as me, after the session I can jump and sing song. Right? But in that very moment, I need to be able to dissociate from there and to recognize that space belongs to the client. Because if I infuse my own emotions, then both of us go into the downward spiral. I remember one time a coach, one of those coaches who says, "Oh, as the client cries, I also need to cry. I need to show. If I cry, it shows I care for the client." This masterful coach obviously doesn't understand what the response he or she is doing on the client. There's nothing wrong with us dropping a tear if we hear a story or anything, but the very idea or the intention of crying so that the client can feel I'm crying, and that's empathy, then you don't understand what empathy really is, right? In the same way, when we hold the space for the client, it's not do what the client do. It's not just if the client screams, do we scream with the client? If the client goes happy, do we jump and be happy? There is a certain place where we need to calibrate. So presence, it's also oftentimes when we need to calibrate and how we calibrate with the client. I think we covered this also in our NLP class, and also some of us who attended the cognitive behavioral classes, or some of us who attended our team leadership class. We talk about this idea that whenever we first encounter that counter-transference effect, are we quick to seize that moment and say, hey, okay, this is touching on an area that is close to my heart. I need to really remind myself, get out of that space and come back into this moment. It's not my time to reminisce on the past. It's now my client's time. I need to be here for them, right? This is the time for them. I'm just going to be here for them. Yeah, I think that is a really, really powerful moment right there. So one of the interesting things about presence as well, especially when you're coaching at the MCC level, it's about not having a sense of my observations are right, not having a sense of attachment to the rightness of my answer or my response. Whatever I say might not be 100% right in the client's book, right? It's an offering of what I'm doing. I'm offering a point, a perspective, and I give the space to allow the client to maneuver and say, hey, no, I think that doesn't make sense. I think something else makes sense. To give that space so that the client can now co-create and to explore and expand from those moments. Let's hear from Yoko. Well, Yoko, what are your thoughts on this? From a Japanese perspective, and having been in Singapore for so many years, and also very familiar with the Indian culture. And for those of you who don't know, she can speak many different languages. So from what we're hearing here, how would you define presence? And for those of you who may not know as well, Yoko does a lot of ikigai coaching, helping people to find meaning. And so we hear from her perspective as well. I think it's going to be really beautiful.
Okay, so the question, the who am I?
Yeah.
Is the other, to me is like a Goparam was saying before the sessions, we never get the answer, who am I? Yeah. So, so for example, because we do not have an answer for that, we don't ask. No, I rather like to continue asking myself, who am I? So, for example, coaching conversations, who am I? The person for the client. And then I can't find any other words besides that. Yeah. So for example, being present, we have to be being present for the client. But what if I ask myself, am I present for the client? Am I curious? This kind of question to myself destroys the presence. That is what I believe. So instead, I ask the question to myself, who am I for the client? Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen in the session. I don't know what's gonna happen the moment. Yeah, but as long as I know who am I for the client, I think we don't need anything else. This is my sharing.
Wow. I can see Gopalan having his mouth here and he's pondering what is coming, what's running through your mind now.
I was amused with the continuous smile that Yoko was reflecting as she was asking about who she was for her client. And the word that came to me when she was articulating was just being a reflection, a reflector, reflecting back to the client, to who the client is, and the journey that the client is taking to where the client wants to be. So to put it in a nutshell, yeah, I suppose the word a connected observer might sum it up.
Well, I love that. I love that. You know, somehow our presence is drawing more and more people into today's session. And we were just talking about, for those of you just tuning in us on this video, I want you to watch this video from the start all the way to the end. And this is going to be amazing because for those of you preparing towards your PCC level or towards MCC level, know this, that it's not about just acquiring information. Now it's about discovery. Now it's about being. How do I practice the sense of a practitioner-based being? And how do I get there? So some people said, okay, I'm going to follow a certain format, a certain there. And for many of us here, we are hearing this conversation of who am I? And we heard from 4 different perspectives here. Who am I? Now, let's ask this question. Who is right? Which one of these 4 perspectives was right? So I'm looking at a smile from Wei Yong, and I think he has an answer. Which one of these 4 perspectives is right?
I think it doesn't matter. There's going into right or wrong is really passing a judgment that goes against the very essence of presence. Presence is just being there, observe. If you start to think about, am I right? Is he right? Then you are in your head and no longer thinking about not being present. So the answer is not important, but who is giving the answer and why is he giving the answer probably is more important.
Notice that was actually a trick question. I purposely asked that question. It was a trick question, and the intention was to just see the response, because now you notice this, right? Sometimes our clients may give us a certain input that might kind of shock us, like, oh, why did the client say this? Or sometimes the client may say to you, "Say, Johnny, is this how a PCC coach coaches?" Now, if we suddenly get affected by that, what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that we are very attached to our performance. That's for one, right? And if we look at the ICF competency rating list, then we realize, oh, right, we have fallen back into the ACC level where we were so concerned with our performance. Have I done well enough? Or sometimes as coaches, we tend to do this. Hey, so if Johnny is my client, I say, hey, Johnny, how's this conversation going? And then when Johnny says, oh, very good, then suddenly, wow, then I feel so happy. Now, that also tells me something, that I'm attached to my performance. Yeah. So sometimes, one of the best ways I've learned, it's sometimes, I call this, it's increasingly a disease that's happening among speakers, trainers, coaches. It's what we call the self-praise. 自嗨, I call it the 自嗨 or self-praise, where after the client, after the session has ended, you ask the client, how's it gone? The client will tell you, wow, Johnny, you touched my heart. Why? Oh, my heart was now mended into pieces. It's like kintsugi all over again. I can feel the flow of gold matching with all the brokenness. Oh, I'm a beautiful person now. I become the blossom and the sakura of the sun. Wow, thank you, Johnny. You are my savior. Now, what happens there? What do you think is the best response from a coach? What do you think is the best response from the coach? Like, now, nothing wrong with client praising us. Like Joanne does such great work with her clients and say, Joanne, wow, you did such a transformation work. Joanne, wow, I love it so much. My heart is now flowers in the sky. I love it. Now, sometimes, of course, clients are not always so expressive, but sometimes clients are very, very thankful and grateful. Now, how we respond to the client also reveals about us being present with ourselves, or present with our performance, or present in that moment with our clients. And you realize the elusiveness of what we call the ego coaching, right? Sometimes I hear this all the time. I see, especially for a lot of coaches. And recently I heard some coaches as well. They may be in the ICF view or not in the ICF view. Doesn't really matter. But I hear a common thing, a common thread is that they like to go online and say, wow, humble brag. We call this humble bragging. Yesterday I was da 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 da, but somehow I was able to da 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 da. Wow, look, I was able to help the poor person. Yeah, if I wasn't there, nobody would help this poor person who was there. Because I was there, I was able to save and rescue this person. That's an example of humble brag. Well, no doubt the action he did was to really for charity, to really help the person. But by the very fact that you are producing it online or to tell people that you have helped someone, then that is bragging itself. So, like for example, if I tell you, hey Johnny, last year I've donated $1,000 for charitable cause. Wow, Now if I do that, then I've violated the very idea of charity. I've violated the very idea of serving people. Because if I have to tell people that I've served 1,000 kids or I've helped, the people from the poor, then I violated the very thing that I set myself up to do, right? Which is to not bring attention to me. In the same way for the coach, as you're practicing coaching for the PCC level and above, it's no longer bring attention to me as the coach. It's no longer bringing how wonderful my questions are, but it's just about, oh, am I there in the moment to create something truly, truly wonderful? So let's open the floor now. How would you guys respond to your clients when they tell you, oh, great job, coach, I love your coaching? How would you respond? What would be a great way of responding to a client like that?
For me, I think I would use the opportunity to acknowledge the client, celebrate their success as opposed to saying, "Well, thank you very much. I hope you had, I agree that I'm happy that you enjoyed it." But more like, "Oh no, you did the hard work. You were the one who generated this result for yourself. You should celebrate your own success." So I think I would deflect, or rather, I would really true-heartedly acknowledge the success of the client, not so much of whether my achievements are important or not.
Okay, no, thanks Leo for sharing. What about the rest? How about you respond to the client who is sharing such a great thing from you?
Thank you for sharing that. How is this serving you, Mr. Client?
That's beautiful. Johnny had a pause, after the client has celebrated. The client thanked Johnny, and Johnny, you did such a great job. And Johnny's first reaction is just to pause and just let it go, let it be, and before responding to the client. Because sometimes, if we are too quick to respond, like we say, "Oh no lah." Okay, I give you an example. The Singaporean culture is that when someone praises us, no, 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 I'm not that good. It's not me. Yeah, I don't want it. But actually, we love it. Come on, praise me some more. But no, 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 no. Don't say that. I'm just a lowly coach. I'm just a lowly coach. So they do the kind of thing. But then we realize actually you can tell a lot whether the coach truly is embodying the sense of serving the client, or is the coach a servant to the client. They're very, very big difference. One is serving, and the other one is a servant unto, or in the sense of servitude to someone else. So sometimes coaches get confused, right? Because they think, "Oh, no, coach, no client, it's all you. You've done such a wonderful job. It's you, right? We celebrate you." Have you seen coaches like this? I've seen before. It's like, "Oh, very amazing," right? It's again, the very action shows the sense of not realness, right? It's not humanness. It's kind of detached. They're just showing a certain facade of themselves, but never quite know themselves. That's why one of the biggest thing for a coach, it's also in the process of coaching and developing yourself, is to get to know yourself even much more. To know thyself, it's one of the pursuits of coaching. We may think we know ourselves, but the day we think we know ourselves, then we do not know ourselves. Because if we knew ourselves, then we become the omniscient person, or we become all-knowing, right? The reason why we still are on this journey is because we are still on this journey to discover more and more about us, because we are still shaped by the forces around us. We're still shaped by the interactions we have with people. Who we are today is different from who we were in the past. How we see today is different from how we see once before. And upon the shoulders that we have sat on, or we've seen higher, those are the moments where we say to ourselves, "Hey, a truly presence-based coach is a coach who says, I'm never stop learning. I'm in this attitude of constantly growing. I may achieve all the levels of the ICF or whichever, right? And maybe I've all the, today I call this what we call a certificate disease, right? They go to this association, got all the level, and go to another, like all the level, I go all the level. Now I'm a MCC, EFG, ABCDEFG, right? I'm everything, right? Okay, what you need, I'm everything, right? Oh, you want this? I have also. Then, what then happens is that they've lost. They've lost the most important precious thing, that is to be a human. What it means to be human, once again. So this big question, the power reflection, who am I in this conversation flow, is so critical, because when we go deeper, this is one of the big things. So let's take a look again for those of our friends who just joined us. We were just having this discussion of the PCC level of the power reflection, that's presence-based coaching, and how do we take it towards the MCC level, right? And that's the little part that we were just talking in just today. Now, for those of you who were just wondering, how then do we begin to do that? Well, in our coming video, we're going to look at these few areas. How did we take and practically apply this power of reflection to deepen the way we are present with the clients? Because we could do a few things. One, reflecting the content of the story, reflecting the context of the situation, reflecting the emotions, reflecting the thoughts of the client, and reflecting the moment by moment shifts in the client that we see. So in our next video, we're going to discuss this, and in our next masterclass, we're going to do this together as a family. So we thank everyone for joining us in this special masterclass that we have, and you guys have an exclusive chance to look into this, and really want to celebrate all of us for being here. So what we're going to do here, for those of you who are watching this and wondering, how can I learn more about this? How can I join this amazing fellowship? I call this the Fellowship of the Ring here in CCL, right? Coaching Genius Lives. You know, we have all the amazing coaches here. We have amazing coaches like Joanne, Hazel, Johnny, Wei Yong, Gopalan, Yoko here joining us this evening as we explore what it means to be a masterful coach. How do we get from where we are to experience mastery in our coaching journey? Right, in the next video, we're going to look at the reflection. How do we practically develop this reflective practice? How do we practically develop this power of reflection? Okay, so see you guys in our next video.